in Waller County. Some of my neighbors here, when I say neighbors, I'm talking 600 feet from me, are in Grimes County. And Montgomery County is only about 2.5 miles from me. So that's why we started out with the Tri-County. Here going forward, we're going to change the name to Waller County instead of Tri-County. So it'll just be one name difference. The reason for that, as much as anything else, is it's gotten kind of confusing on the number of groups that are out there. There are a bunch of groups that are opposing the high-speed rail, and at this point in time, we kind of want to keep them separate, but together. We're going to kind of go over how all that's going to work here in a minute. Because you've got the Grimes County Advocacy Group, you've got David Tulls here with that group this evening. We also got Texans, it's called Texans United Against the HSR. We also have the No HSR people, which they're going to be speaking tonight as well. So we're kind of all over the place, but today our goal is to get everybody brought together and kind of work out a plan where we can all fight this train together. I would like to start also by doing just a real brief history for those of you that have, or this is your first meeting to ever attend. High-speed rail in Texas has been going on for a while. They got serious about trying to put it in again about 4 years ago. For most of us, I didn't hear about it until November when they started doing the scoping meeting. When they first started, the TCR had 9 routes that they were looking at. Now, most of you have heard in the last day or two, they picked out the Waller County route as the preferred route. I'm going to tell y'all right now that does not necessarily mean that it's going to go through our county. They have not made, there is no official route at this point in time. That will be determined by the FRA, which is the Federal Railroad Administration. Where they're at right now, they're in the part of the EIS, which is the Environmental Impact Study. That's supposed to come out sometime later this year. Again, there's no date on it. We just know that it's coming out sometime soon. This rail will run from Houston to Dallas, taking in several counties. The speakers tonight are going to go over exactly what's going to happen as the train takes over. So those of you that have questions, especially about your own properties, please at this point in time just hold your questions. Okay, there's those kind of things where we're all in this together at this point in time, and we know that everybody's getting affected in some way or another. We're going to try to explain to you guys what we can do to fight it as a group. Tell you what, the other thing I like to do when I'm sitting here thinking about it, how many people here are from Waller County? Can you raise your hands? How many people here are from Grimes County? Anybody here from Montgomery County? I want you guys to see that your neighbors are in this with you. That's what we're fighting. We're fighting for ourselves and we're fighting for our neighbors next to us. Okay, a couple ways on how we're going to fight and how we're going to go about doing it. There's 3 basic prongs that we're looking at. The first one is what we call the grassroots section. That's letters, emails, phone calls, organizational at the grassroots. That's where you folks are tonight. This is the grassroots starting of the fight. We're the group that has to show that we don't want the train here. We show it by numbers, like we have tonight. And again, I appreciate the numbers that are here tonight. I'm just overwhelmed by the support here. But also, we're going to have to put together a complete organizational setup to where we're sending letters all the time. We're communicating with all of our elected officials. This will be a battle that will take place on the political front. There's no other way to look at it. That's the way it's going to be. And it starts with you folks here in this room. We've got to stay organized. We've got to stay together. Okay? The second part of it will be the Sub-Regional Planning Commission. I'm going to have Judge Trey Duhon speak on that and explain how coordination works a little bit on how they're going to fight it at that level. The third way to fight this thing will be on it's a nonprofit level, on the state and national level. And you say to yourself, well, why do we need to do this on the state and national level? Well, if you guys don't know it, this TCR claims to be a privately funded entity. Well, it is. Chronicled yesterday's edition, or sorry, the 17th edition, the Texas Central has said the line expected to cost at least $10 million would be privately funded. The primary investor would be the Japan Bank for International Corporation, a publicly owned Japanese bank that lends to projects that could benefit the Japanese economy. Again, this has nothing to do with helping us. There is no benefit for us. The train goes through, we're benefiting Japan's who we're benefiting. So we're going to talk about why we have to fight on a national level, because that's where a lot of the funds will be coming from. That's where a lot of the incentives are coming from. It's from that area.
I was looking at this crowd and I thought to myself, I haven't seen this many people in a room since the Trans-Texas Corridor. Y'all remember that?
Yes.
Okay. I hate the fact that this is the way we all get together, is for these kind of things. But when you are one of the smallest rural counties next to one of the largest counties in the state of Texas, I have a feeling these are the kind of things we're going to be dealing with, whether it's power lines, high-speed rail, landfills, you name it. You know, we're going to be dealing with these things, and it's something that we're going to have to stand together. You know, I'm talking tonight a little bit about the Sub-Regional Planning Commission and how we're going to utilize it in this fight. The Sub-Regional Planning Commission, for those that don't know, we formed back in 2007, 2008, and we did it in response to the Trans-Texas Corridor. Sub-Regional Planning Commission is basically something that is provided for under the Texas Local Government Code. It's kind of an obscure little passage, Chapter 391. Sometimes you hear people call these 391 commissions. And basically what it is, it says that any combination of a county and a city, or two cities, can get together and form a sub-regional planning commission. And then by law, any state agency shall coordinate with that local planning entity. Okay? The sub-regional planning commissions are also important because almost every federal law that's out there, whether it's EPA, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, actually has provisions in it that requires that federal agency to also coordinate with local planning entities. Now, coordinate, what does that mean? Coordination means equal partners. It means they're not going to dictate to us. They're not going to tell us this is what we're going to do. Sorry that you don't like it. They have to treat us equally. And if they don't, at any point in time, if we need to go to a federal judge and say they will not coordinate with us, then that judge will put an injunction in place until they decide to treat us as equal partners. Now, a lot of people will take credit for the Trans-Texas Corridor going away. I've talked to, it's funny now, you hear from different senators and legislators, and they say, yeah, I filed the legislation to kill the Trans-Texas Corridor. That's not what killed the Trans-Texas Corridor. Sub-regional planning commissions killed the Trans-Texas Corridor. There was a sub-regional planning commission during the Trans-Texas Corridor days, the Eastern Central Texas Sub-Regional Planning Commission. And the reason I'm looking at my phone is because it was comprised of some of the smallest towns and cities you've never heard of. Towns of Bartlett, Holland, Academy, Rogers, and their school districts. And they were along the route of the TTC 35. These small towns. The TTC 35 was just basically going to cut up right through the middle of them. It was going to tear their communities in half. So they got together, and with Dan and Margaret Byfield, with Stewards of the Range, and if you don't know who they are one of the premier organizations. They're a nonprofit that protect private property rights. They fight all over the country. They help people protect their communities. They've done it time and time again. They've done it with high-speed. They've done it with the high-speed rail in California. They've done it with power lines. They are the experts when it comes to coordination. They bring federal agencies to their knees with coordination. I'll give you one example. Besides the Trans-Texas Corridor, there's a West Texas, U.S. Fish and Wildlife came in and wanted to shut down all the oil and gas production in West Texas because of the dune sagebrush lizard, which they had on their threatened list, and they wanted to put it on the endangered list. So they came in and they basically shut down all the oil and gas. Well, as you can imagine, that oil and gas production is vital to some of those communities in West Texas. So what they did, and this is just a couple of years ago, they went in, they formed a sub-regional planning commission. They actually partnered up with the oil and gas companies, which sometimes it makes for strange bedfellows, but they had the money. Dan and Margaret Byfield came in and they got experts to come in and they actually did real research with real science. And as a result of that, not only did the dune sagebrush lizard not become an endangered species, it was taken off of the threatened list. And the whole reason for them shutting down the oil and gas production just basically went away overnight. Now Fish and Wildlife, basically, they go to Dan and Margaret Byfield so that they can understand and teach all of their agents out there what it means to coordinate with local entities. Okay? Now back to Trans-Texas Corridor, these little towns, they got together, they formed a sub-regional planning commission. It was the first one formed in Texas. The law that I referred to later, that obscure little provision, what it was put in the law by a representative who is now a federal judge. And they asked him, they said, well, why'd you put this provision in the law? And he said, you know what, I got sick and tired of the state coming in and just telling us what they were going to do. I want people to have a say in it. So he put this provision in there. Well, they formed the Eastern Central Texas Sub-Regional Planning Commission. They gave notices to TxDOT. They said, you will coordinate with us on this TTC 35. TxDOT flat out ignored them. They sent another notice. They got ignored. So then they sent a letter to the EPA. And they said, hey, EPA, TxDOT is not coordinating with us. And the EPA, see, that the environmental impact statement is delegated to TxDOT by the EPA. Well, EPA sent a team of attorneys down, and they met with Eastern Central Texas folks, and they called TxDOT to the table, and they said, you will sit down with these folks, and you will coordinate with them. So TxDOT realized at that point they were in trouble. And at that point, we realized how powerful these sub-regional planning commissions could be. And they started popping up all along the route of TTC 69, all along the route of TTC 35. I think ours was either the second or the third to be formed. And we had just sent our letters of coordination to TxDOT when TxDOT basically withdrew the plans for the TTC. Because they realized if they had to sit down with each sub-regional planning commission, there's no way they would have been able to do that project the way they wanted to do it. And they basically recommended the no-build alternative. So, what are we doing with our sub-regional planning commission now? Luckily, we created this group in 2007, 2008. It's still there. It's a tool in our toolbox. So we have already actually started the coordination process. Back in November, we did letters of coordination, and we sent them to the Federal Railroad Administration and to TxDOT, asking for coordination on this project. To date, we have received 0 response. Now, I'm going to be meeting with Dan and Margaret Byfield here in the next week or so, because we will then be planning our next step. And it's going to be a very deliberate process, because what we're doing is we are building a record. We are building a record to show that if they don't coordinate with us and treat us as equal partners, and by the way, they also have to make their plans consistent with our plans. And the burden is on the agency. So if we have a plan for mobility, if we have a plan for transportation in Waller County, and that plan does not involve a high-speed rail that is basically a Berlin Wall across our county, then we come in and say, this is not going to work with our plan. And then the burden is on them to make it work for us. And if they don't, then again, we have the ability to go in and stop this project. So it is far and away going to be one of the most powerful tools we have in this fight. Grimes County has a sub-regional. I know I was with Judge Doyle today from Montgomery County. We were in Austin talking to some of our senators about this project and about how it needs to be stopped. I know Montgomery County is looking at doing a 391. I hope they continue to do that. Do not let your guard down for 1 second. Ben Lamont and I have met with other county judges along the route, Byron Ryder with Leon County, and we're doing everything we can to make sure these guys know that they need 391 commissions. And then the FRA will have to deal with all of us individually. So that's kind of give you an idea of what we're doing right now with Sub-Regional Planning Commission. We're going to probably have a commission meeting coming up probably first Monday in March. If you don't have any information, or I update we have a Facebook page for the Sub-Regional Planning, Waller County Sub-Regional Planning Commission. We'll definitely get as much information out to y'all as we can. The biggest thing right now, and I know you're going to hear from some other folks, Dan and Margaret Byfield, who have agreed to come in and help us with this coordination process. We this is what they do. This is what they do for a living. So one of the things that we're going to need all of you to do is to give, is to donate to this cause. It's going to be important that we be able to have Dan and Margaret Byfield behind us, giving us advice, telling us how to proceed in this, because they know how to do this better than anybody else. I know a lot about sub-regional planning commissions. I've been involved in this since 2007, but I'm not the expert. Dan and Margaret Byfield are. We want them on our side, and they're ready to go. But we're going to need to be able to have the funds to bring them on board, and we're going to need the funds to do some lobbying and doing those kind of things. So you'll hear about that later. So I'm glad to see everybody here. I appreciate y'all being here. You know, I'll just say this: when it came to the Trans-Texas Corridor, we beat the corridor because we stood side by side. We stood shoulder to shoulder. We did not take the approach of not in my backyard. We said it's a bad plan. It doesn't matter where it goes. It's a bad plan. And this is a bad plan. And it needs to be stopped. It's the kind of thing, like I said, the way I describe it, a Berlin Wall right through the county, where you can't access your property from the other side. It creates obsolescence issues. I mean, the list goes on and on. The numbers don't work. 9 million people that they think are going to ride this thing and pay $300 from point A to point B when they're not saving. They're not going to save time. You got to go into Houston and go through security. It ain't going to happen. And what happens when that thing goes belly up? Who's going to get stuck holding the bag on that? Yeah, all of y'all. That's right, the taxpayers. Or I can promise you this: be ready for it. This thing won't get built. They say we're going to be built with private money. No, it's going to be Obama dollars is what it's going to be. This is Obama's baby. This is what he did in California. So mark my words on that. I'm going to be moving the crosshairs to Waller County. And so I called TJ and I said, okay, it's time. It's real now. We got to mobilize. We got to get people involved. People need to know. You know, it still could go somewhere else. I don't know, but we have to fight as if it's going to be coming right down this path. So we will continue to keep you guys in the loop. I appreciate everybody here tonight, and God bless Waller.
I ran for county judge because I was very concerned about these issues that we're all facing in all of the neighboring counties from Harris County. And one in particular was the high-speed rail. And as this popped up, I felt that this is something that I truly believe we can stop. But it's going to require a very organized and aggressive effort to do that on many levels. And through, I've always been involved in politics, been involved in a lot of grassroots efforts, and grassroots are great, but it's one component of an overall effective plan. And so I started to develop a strategy and finding board members and participants that I felt would be a good fit to form a statewide and national plan to address this issue. So what we formed is the entity. At this point, we recently formed it, and it also includes timing. You can't form it too early, right? Because nobody's there to work with. So it's Texans Against High-Speed Rail is the name of the organization. It's a 501c4, and it is stood up at this point. What our plan is basically it's going to include state lobbying efforts, state legislative efforts. It's working with state officials, keeping them informed, and countering all of the lobbying efforts that TCR is up there doing. So every day TCR is up there right now meeting with our state representatives, teaching them about their view of this project and why it's a good thing. But there's no effort other than individual, random attempts at countering that. There's no coordinated day in and day out effort to educate and inform our representatives of why it's not. So it's very important because the legislative battle is a huge component, a huge opportunity to throw up roadblocks and stop this project. So we have that legislative effort. So we have hired a lobbying firm to represent us in that effort. We have as well. We have local officials that we have to work with. I got a call from Leon County Judge Byron Ryder, and we're going to go up there and do a presentation to their commissioner's court because they need more information. And so communication and coordination between the grassroots level and a broader perspective on a state level is going to be critical to getting this done. In addition to that, there's the national lobbying effort and legislative effort. You know, as was mentioned earlier, the money really comes from Washington, right? That's where Obama has appropriated $12.5 billion. He passed that in his budget in 2009. They have spent about $2.5 billion of that to date. And this doesn't affect us. What it affects in Texas, as far as in Texas, there are routes between Fort Worth and Austin that are being studied right now. There are routes between Austin and Houston that are being looked at right now. But it's all kind of underneath, you know, underneath the blanket and nobody can see it. So exposing that and energizing the grassroots level across these different areas, it's a huge component to informing our elected officials. We're going to work with the 391 Commission as well. Trey and I went up there. We met with several of the judges, but this 391 Commission is very powerful in this instance. So I encourage you to understand that and participate in that process. The board members of our organization, I'm our chairman of the board. We have 3 other board members. One is Frank Riley. Frank Riley is a general counsel. He serves as the general counsel. He's also a long history of conservative activism. Founding member of the Young Conservatives of Texas. Just a lot of lists there. It'll be on the website, more about him. Glenn Addison is another board member. Y'all may recognize that name. He ran for U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz. Ended up not winning, obviously. Both are good men, but Glenn is a very strong conservative and very principled man. Glad to have him on the board. Additionally to that, we have Kyle Workman. Kyle is somebody that I've been working with closely, and Kyle's also the president of the organization.
Just like you, we found out about it late. There was no information coagulated in something anybody could read, so we started to do research and put things on our website. So I encourage you to continue to monitor those website avenues to see the different research that we keep coming up with. As Judge Lamont said, this is part of a larger plan, right? Everybody needs to understand that while we're looking at this one between Dallas and Houston right now, this is kind of like the $15,000 crew cab pickup truck that's on the front of the page of the newspaper, right? So their goal is to get this one on the ground so they can sell us all the rest of the trains around Texas and around the nation. So that's why they're saying, oh, this is private, y'all don't need to worry about it, y'all don't need to worry about it. Well, let me tell you, the rest of them are public, okay? But once they get them private, once they get the one on the ground, then they feel like they'll be able to do the rest of them, okay? As Judge Lamont mentioned, they are in the process of doing EIS or environmental studies actually from Oklahoma to Monterrey, Mexico, and also from Houston to San Antonio, Austin area. You know, they want to be able to get the weed from Monterey all the way up there just as fast as they possibly can. Right? But the important thing to remember is that at the end of the day, the goal is going to be to get all these things working together so that the handful of people that can ride this thing will actually, you know, there'll be something for somebody to ride, right? They think that they're going to convince us to give up our cars by giving this wonderful new train that, by the way, is a 50-year-old train that they've been using in Japan for over 50 years. It's a steel wheel track. And I don't know if you've heard, but there's new things out. Maglev is one of them that goes 100 miles an hour faster. It's a whole lot more energy efficient. But this is a steel wheel train, electric train, overhead catenary, which means they have electric lines running over it. And one of the things I wanted to share with you was some of the misnomers that you may hear, right? You hear things about grade separated, right? You know, that makes you think, well, it's all elevated. Well, no. What that means is that if there's a crossing, it's going to go under or over it. The train is not going to go up and down, right? It's not Six Flags. It's going to stay down on the ground, and it's going to cut our properties in half, okay? And it's going to be high fenced on both sides. And it's going to have to be hog proof. I don't know about you guys, we have a hog problem in Leon County. Well, y'all probably know this, but hogs can get through just about any fence we can build. So they're going to have to put concrete, something, constantly. It'll be maintained and all that. Who's going to provide security for this track up and down our rural areas, right? Is that going to be left up to our individual fire and EMS? You know, is that what they're going to now have to do? Our sheriff's departments that are already overworked and understaffed, right? So there's a lot of different concerns we've got, right? So we got together. I'm gonna circle back a little bit. I want to talk briefly about the players. Y'all have heard some of the acronyms out here: FRA, TCR. When we say TCR, we're talking about Texas Central Rail. When we say FRA, we're talking about the Federal Railroad Administration. TxDOT, of course, you know, is involved. TASHR, which is us, HSR, excuse me, HSR, excuse me, I get the tongue tie there. Texans Against High-Speed Rail is going to be us. And then you've got the Surface Transportation Board, which is a federal agency that will allow or provide the railroad status to TCR if they so desire. So you may hear that. And then URS is the private company that's doing the environmental assessment. So people throw around those acronyms, I just want to give people an idea of what they were. The project we know is a 240 mile high-speed train from Dallas to Houston, primarily through rural East Texas. As y'all know, this is by design because it's flat and it's rural. And in their mind, that's undeveloped and that's cheap, right? In our mind, it's not undeveloped, it's developed. It's the way we wanted to develop it, right? Not the way they think it, but that's the way they view it. And we saw that through the scoping meetings. For those of you that have been through some of the scoping meetings, you could watch their message change. Initially, it was, oh, look, this is all rural, flat land, is cheap. And then by the end of the day, they had tried to drop that designation because they realized that wasn't going over very well. Whenever you see statements from TCR, you need to remember to read them very carefully. Try not to look at them at what they seem to say from a 30,000-foot view, okay? When they issued the statement last week that essentially said it's not going to go through Montgomery County, if you read it closely, it says we're going to make a recommendation to not use that route. Well, but then you go ask the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, and they say, no, we're the ones that have the final say. TCR has no say in it. So really what they said was nothing, right? Because they really can't do anything about it. So we just got to keep in mind when you hear things from TCR, you have to read them very carefully, almost taking your initial reaction away from it and looking at the details, the words that they use. They're very carefully crafted. They're not haphazard with their language. So you got to just make sure that you read them very carefully. For one example that I always like to point out is when they say the word corridor. You know, they say, we're going to go down the utility corridor and it's not going to affect as many people. Well, what they're not really, so what they're trying to keep you from understanding, excuse me, is that they're still going to take brand new land. They're not going to use an existing right-of-way, okay? They're going to take a whole new right-of-way, 100 foot, 200 feet, whatever it is. But they're trying to fool some of the people into thinking, oh, it's existing land, it's already dedicated for something else, what's the big deal? Just keep in mind, look for those things that are somewhat misleading or at least mischaracterize the truth, okay? We talked about it's a little bit dedicated tracks. It's not something that will be shared with other trains. There will be two of them running each direction, one every 30 minutes, 7 days a week is what their website says. So I don't know about you, but that's a lot of time to go back and forth between Dallas with nobody on it. There's plenty of research out there that these high-speed trains are actually a fairly high-value target, particularly given the terrorism that goes on in the world. Try not to get all conspiracy theory or anything like that, but just to point out that this is a serious issue that we need to continue to talk about at the local level with our county commissioners and our county judges, because it's something that can potentially create a burden for the county long term. All right, so we talked a little bit about Texans Against High-Speed Rail. Again, we're a 501c4. We're actually merging the two major groups, the No Texas Central out of Montgomery County and No Texas HSR, which was my wife and I's group. We're going to all come together and form one group. So over the next week or two, you're going to see a rollout of a completely new organization. This organization will have the ability to actually take the fight literally to the state capitol, as Judge Lamont talked about, which is something that we think is a necessity. We're working on legislation. We're working on with legislators about dealing with some of the existing legislation that's on the books, talking grilling TxDOT on a regular basis. We've got some legislators that are helping us out with that. So we are going to take the fight directly to the state capitol. Result of that, financial requirements, we're going to talk a little about that as a fundraising here, but I want you to know that myself, my wife, Ms. Desi, we are all, and Judge Lamont, we are all volunteers. Okay, we're not taking any salary. We're putting in. We all have jobs. My wife's a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids at homeschools. She's got the best job of all, but she's doing this, in her spare time, and the same goes with me. So I wanted you to be aware that we are not. This is not for our purposes, right? We're here to support the local officials with information, the state officials with information, and then also to take the fight to the State House. Also, just so you know, one of the things that we did to start the organization, we wrote our own personal checks. So not only are we investing our time, we're also investing our money. So we're not standing up here asking you to do something that we're not willing to do, or didn't already do, actually. One of the things that we're going to work on here in the next month or so is creating somewhat of a delegate program so that we can continue to share the information as it comes available down to the individual grassroots efforts. One thing we cannot do, we talked, TJ mentioned it a little bit, we can't get into every individual landowner's issue. We're going to do the best we can to help support you and your county commissioners and your local groups. But just recognize that we're trying to fight this on an overall state level. So we've got to kind of keep our focus there, but we'll have plenty of information for you to help with that. If you come up with something and you think it was something we need to know about, we want to hear from you. We've created an email address, info@texansagainst.hsr.com. It'll be on our website when you get there. Feel free to send us, hey, did you see this? We'll go vet it out. If you got a question, send it to us. My wife's going to do community outreach. Ms. Desi's going to do the director of communications. We're going to do the best we can to continue to field that information and get you something back. But understand that we're going to be fielding a lot more now that we're doing it from a state level. This is a marathon, not a sprint, right? We got to keep in mind that this is a long-term battle. They've been working on it for 3 or 4 years. They got 3 or 4 more years left. Okay, we're jumping in the middle, but we've got 3 or 4 more years left, right? So we just need to keep in mind that although that we're putting a lot of effort right now, and we think it's very important to come out of the gate strong, we have to maintain once we get there. It can't just be a little shot and then we're done. So keep in mind, marathon, not sprint. We must be committed, all of us. If it's not good for me, it's not good for you. If it's not good for you, it's not good for me. And one of the worst things we can have happen right now is for somebody to say, well, it got pushed out of my county. I'm glad. See you later. Doesn't affect me. That is the worst thing that can happen to us. We cannot let that happen as a group. We cannot have the not in my backyard attitude. It just will not help the overall effort. I mentioned a little bit about the statewide plan. Understand this, the Texas Transportation Commission actually has a commission on high-speed rail. This is a Texas issue. This is not a TCR 1 Dallas to Houston issue. This is an overall issue. We're going to be working very diligently to change TxDOT's approach on how they view high-speed rail in Texas. There's actually a state law that prohibits them from using state funds for passenger rail in the state of Texas. So we're going to be monitoring that and make sure that doesn't change. That's the concern that we've got. So what they've come up with, in response to that, TxDOT has come up with public-private partnerships. They're working just like they're doing with this, with TCR. They're using federal funding through the grants that they can get to do the environmental studies, so that the individual private owners don't have to take the risk on the study. So the way they're doing it, they're basically saying, I'll tell you what, we as the state of Texas will go out and we'll do the evaluation for you, and then we'll hand you on a platter your investment package. For anybody that says the state funds aren't being used, or the state's not involved, or TxDOT's not really interested in it, that's simply not the case. They're the ones that are getting the grants, not TCR. Right?
My name is John Howard. I'm a resident of Montgomery County. I live in the Woodlands. I work for a firm called First Tradition Strategic Communications, and we are a political consulting group, and we're an advocacy group, and we also help with fundraising. We have been asked to work with the newly formed entity in fundraising, so that's why we're here tonight, or why I'm here tonight. You know, I grew up in a little county, rural county, Bowie County, town of Texarkana, and I grew up on Sundays going to church. And what the pastor would always tell us at the end of the sermon, we'd preach and we'd hear the Bible verses, and then he'd kind of draw you in and say, now here's the takeaway. Here's the takeaway tonight, folks. Here's what's important. A lot of people are comparing this to David and Goliath. And you can assign the parties in this race, into this battle that we have. But you know what? We have got an opportunity here to beat David in this race. And let's recall that for just a second. David was chosen. He went out and he prepared. And as he went out and prepared, he had his instrument of war. And do we recall what that was?
Slingshot.
Slingshot. Can you imagine David going to battle with a slingshot against a giant and not having any pebbles? I will put forth to you tonight, money are pebbles. Money are rocks that will destroy this giant. We're here to help organize that. Administratively, I need to give you a little bit of information about fundraising. The group, again, and a lot of this, or a little bit of this is going to be redundant. It's Texans Against High-Speed Rail. It is a 501c4. The mission statement. Organization dedicated to the defeat of the proposed Texas Central High-Speed Railway. Our members include citizens, business owners, and elected officials from all across Texas who share our core belief of combating eminent domain and our opposition to a tax-subsidized railway. Here are the goals of this entity. Stop the high-speed rail project. Protect property owners in the affected areas. Protect the rights of property owners in Texas by not allowing this precedent to be set. Protect taxpayers from this financial disaster, which has been proven time and time again. Let me tell you a little bit about what this group's going to do. You heard from Kyle, you heard from the judge. Let me tell you just a little bit more. It will keep the public informed. That is critical. Thank you for being here again tonight. But it will keep the public informed. It will hold elected officials and agencies accountable. It will promote the project transparency. Quite frankly, not a lot we've seen from TCR, and we will demand transparency. It will actively lobby in Austin and Washington. It will advocate for the rights of private citizens. It will also advocate for the rights of counties and municipalities. So when we get down to it, what's the sermon? What's the takeaway again? It's fundraising. It's getting dollars. It's getting stones in our slingshots. So when we go up against this giant, we're going to take him down. What we've got is we've got a website as described, and it will be live on Monday. On that website, there is a link where you can donate. You can go on and you can choose different levels of donations, and you will be able to choose different categories, yard sign, different other categories, and donate whatever amount that you feel compelled to. So that is the why. Let me tell you a little bit about the how. You can do it with a check. You can do it with a debit or a credit card. You can do it tonight if you like. If you have a check and you'd like to donate, make that out to the Texans Against High-Speed Rail. We also have the availability. I've got a link that I can give you if you want to donate online tonight. The site will be live on Monday, but if you'd like, I've got my business cards on the back table. Take one, send me your information. I'll be glad to send you a link. Briefly, again, on the use, we're going to lobby state U.S. legislators. We have a superb lobbying group out of Austin that will be accommodating us. Some of the use of the funds also will be to help the executive officers in their fight against the TCR. Specifically, in the spirit of transparency, it will help defray travel, operating expenses, and marketing. Operating expenses being specifically in the area of legal and CPA services. Is there any questions broadly about fundraising or donating?
So you're designating this organization as a 501c4, so that means that any donations to this organization will not be tax deductible, correct?
That is correct. As a 501c4, which this political pact, this group must meet, and not a 501c3, those will not be deductible.
What do you guesstimate the cost is? I mean, what kind of dollars?
That's a good question. How much money do you think it's going to take? Well, again, it's a long-term fight. We know the costs are currently going to run us about $10,000 a month for the lobbyists, the CPA, the counsel, the legal assistants. So we're going to be, our goal is $120,000 a year at a minimum. So now that's spread out over 10 or 15 10 counties or so. Hopefully will not be overburdensome. We understand that, but again, as I said before, remember this is not going to pay anybody's salaries. This is going to pay to actually go to fight this issue at the state and the federal level.
Will people be able to set it up to where it's a recurring?
Yes,
Donation?
that is an option. Yes, I was looking at the website today, or the pay to donate, and it is set up if you want to check recurring.
Is this the only organization we need to join? I would submit to you that's probably not. But I know your individual counties have some costs that they're going to be defraying in their 391 commissions, so there'll be a little bit of that. We're going to do the best we can to provide that outlet for each of the citizenry at the State House so that we don't have multiple levels. At the end of the day, we do not want multiple messages coming out of our groups, right? We want one message. And we're working with these county judges. That's one of the reasons why I was really excited to join with Judge Lamont here, because we're working with the counties at the county level. We're not doing this by ourselves, right? So I think the short answer is we would appreciate your donation. The long answer is you may have somebody else, but we're going to do the best we can to carry the torch for the entire region from Ellis County all the way down here to Waller and Montgomery County.
Let me add to that.
Will you give a list of all the counties from Dallas all the way down to Houston that are affected by this?
Sure. The counties between here and there, and I'm gonna do most of them by memory, so forgive me if I miss one. It's Ellis, Navarro, Freestone, potentially Limestone, Leon, Madison, and then Grimes, and then either Waller or Montgomery County. That's the corridor. Did I get them all? Okay. Did I get them? Harris. Well, you know what? We're glad that you're here because you're outnumbered. We really hope that you go take the fight to your people.
Now, we're the forgotten little quarter.
Well, you know what? We're glad you're here. Hey, man, I'm just...
To my knowledge, we're the only organization that is taking this to a statewide effort. So as far as any other organizations that are hiring lobbyists and things of that nature on a state or national level, I'm not aware of any. I think we are unique in that aspect of it.
Also need some funds, even though the American Stewards are a 501, they need to get paid as well. Unfortunately, it's going to take some money on that issue as well, so we're going to have to raise some funds for that. I want to thank Rhonda Jordan for helping me put this together tonight. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have this facility. To help me put this organization together and get the word out and let people know that, hey, this is how we're going to fund it. This is how we're going to put it together. That's what I need. I need people that have technical skills as far as internets, webs, things of that nature. That's what I need. So what I'm asking for the folks here in Waller County today especially, is that you get with me afterwards. If you want to help, again, right now I need bodies. At some point in time we'll need the funds, but right now I need bodies.
$120,000 a year that you want, what are we paying the lobbyists?
Good question. How much of the $120,000 a year that we think we need is the lobbyist? The lobbyist is running us exactly $4,000 a month right now during session. It'll probably increase over time because as we get them more and more involved, we started them last week or 2 weeks ago, and they're just getting up to speed. We're trying to address TCR. Just so you know, brief history. TCR is there right now. They've been there for 2 or 3 weeks. They had a presentation earlier this week where they actually invited all the legislators in, fed them breakfast. Tell them all about how great the project is. And so we're running around behind them kind of trying to mop up that mess. It's currently $4,000 a month, and then as it the effort has to get raised, we'll have to revisit that. I mean, there's not a cap, it's not open-ended, it's not, they have to come get approval for any additional funds before they expend them. So, it's a good question, but I mean, I'm trying to tell you exactly what we have signed up, and it's $4,000 a month.
Hey Kyle,
Yo.
just as a matter of fact, I've dealt a lot with Judge Eccles and the TCR and that group. They've got multiple lobbyists retained. I think their number is about 25,000 a month right now on retainer for lobbies, so.
Yeah.
Who are you using?
It's significant.
The company is a guy named Galt Graydon. You're familiar with them, you're shaking your head. We feel like we have a top-tier lobbyist that's working on this effort. Anecdotally, that would maybe be a little comfort, they actually fought it in the 90s. Okay, Galt Graydon was on the side of, he represents Southwest. So as soon as Southwest decides to jump into the fight, we'll already have our efforts merged with Southwest. Okay, so we're pretty happy with who we have representing us. So.
Is in Harris County. Does Harris County have a 391? I presume if they do, they're in favor. What do you know about that, and what do we do from here with that?
I'm not aware of Harris County having a 391. I would encourage, if there's some folks, if there's some Harris County residents here, I would absolutely encourage you to look at having a meeting further into Houston. One part of this fight is going to be educating people that have nothing to do with this. Okay? Facebook, social media, Twitter, you name it. That's something, when we were fighting the Trans-Texas Corridor, that really hadn't hit yet. So when we were fighting the corridor, a lot of what we did was by email. And probably the most effective thing that I had for citizens, back then I was with Citizens for a Better Waller County, but we had an email list. We had 500 emails. And every time that we saw a bill coming down, or we needed people to pick up the phone and call their legislators, call their representatives, call their senators, we sent out an email. And we asked those folks to turn around and send that email to their friends and to their family and to their co-workers, and to repeat the process. And usually what we found is that I would send out an email, and within an hour or 2 hours, I'd get a phone call from Senator Hager or somebody else saying, "We got it. We need the phone lines to do other things." And that would come from a number of folks, and we got their attention. Well, social media makes it so much easier. So when you see, like the Texans Against High-Speed Rail, they're going to have a Facebook presence. And if you're not on Facebook, but you have internet, I know a lot of people don't have a thing against Facebook. Join it just for this purpose. Just so you can go and follow the Texans Against High-Speed Rail, the Waller Group, the Waller Group that's going to, Citizens, we got a Grimes Citizens Advisory Group, is that right? Did I get that right?
You got it.
You want to follow all of those different sites, because there will be a lot of good information coming from all of them. And then you share it. You share it and share it and share it, and other people will share it. That's how it goes viral. That's how you get the information out. Because we've got to make sure other people in Texas, even if they're not personally affected, it doesn't come through their land, it is going to affect them. It will come out of somebody's pocket someday. Okay? So we have got to educate folks. But Harris County, as far as I know, does not have a 391. A little bit of, $25 a month, but it just keeps going. That's fine.
Monday
That's
to
great.
John Mark.
Yes, sir. You have a question?
To help 391.
As I understand it, it's planned to come right down Hager Road, is that correct?
Well, I can tell you, they want to run it adjacent to the utility corridor. The high power lines, the transmission lines, that's where they want to do it. That's why they're recommending the FRA. They want to shift their focus. Because, and bottom line, I'll tell you why. I mean, and maybe some of this, I might be getting a little bit of my personal view. It's a straight shot all the way from Gibbons Creek, all the way to the Zenith substation. And what they want to do is they want to get to 290, and they know once they get to 290, they can try to get adjacent to the current rail line. And if anybody knows anything about the current 290 expansion, part of that 290 expansion is a reservation of a 50-foot corridor that's supposed to be for commuter rail, future commuter rail. I promise you that's where they want to go. Because if they can tie into that, they get all the way to Northwest Mall, you know, quick and easy.
I'm Harris County too, but, I mean, if we support this effort, we're still supporting fighting the rail.
Oh, absolutely,
I don't see,
absolutely. It can't get to you guys unless it comes through us. So, but it would be good to see, it would be good to see an effort in Harris County because, you know, who's driving this? Well, besides TCR, Dallas and Houston. Dallas and Houston, they think this will be just the greatest thing. Dallas, you know, they've got their pom-poms on, they're ready to go. They think they've already selected their station, and they're all set to go. Houston, we've got to let people know what this is about. And I mean, the reality is, the numbers, when you look at, and you know what, Ben, you should really come up here. Because Ben, this guy actually wrote an article. If you haven't read Ben's article, he knows the numbers better than anybody else because the numbers don't work. So I'm going to let Ben talk about it.
Basically, when you look at their projection, the numbers are 9.9 million riders between Houston and Dallas annually. That's what they're projecting. Okay. There are a total of 1.5 million passengers that fly in airplanes between Houston and Dallas currently per year. This is all annual. So the total vehicle passenger rate is 18 million per year. That's total vehicles. So how much of that is, you know, freight trucks, stuff like that. So where are these people coming from? When you process you go through the decision-making process from the rider's perspective, the first question you ask is, how much does it cost? And the second is, how does it compare to my current method of travel? Door-to-door travel time from Dallas to Houston is 3.5 to 4 hours. Door-to-door travel time when you take an airplane is 3.5 to 4 hours. Door-to-door travel time with a train is 3.5 to 4 hours. And that's all. That's any way you slice it. They advertise 90 minutes, but it's 3.5 hours before. So when the travel time is the same and the cost of the train is going to be equivalent to an airplane, about $275 round trip, including all the taxi cabs and rental cars, and parking fees, and the train ticket. People have already made that decision. They already decided, I don't want to fly. 18 million people have already made that decision every year. I don't want to take that trade-off, right? I don't want to take the plane over driving. It doesn't, for whatever reason, it's not functional for them. So just because it's a train instead of a plane doesn't make any difference. I've ridden on high-speed rail. It's neat, but it's not that neat. Where are these people coming from? They won't provide any of their detailed information on their business plan. When you question them, hey, these numbers don't make sense, that, well, we're not using those numbers for our business plan. Well, why are you saying these numbers then? And show me the numbers on the business plan. Let's see the ones that you say make sense. So there's a lot of questions there, and there are very few answers. But anyway, the numbers don't make sense on that from that perspective.
That's just what they need to make it viable. Right. That's what they need to make it profitable. And if you look at what they're estimating the cost to be, if we look at the California high-speed rail, which, and I know you got to discount it because it's part of it's California. They overestimated, or they underestimated what it was going to take to cost that thing by 3 times. Okay? So if they're under the money on this deal, then that ridership level is even higher. So I don't see how the numbers work, not without somebody subsidizing it.
California is going to cost $131 million per mile, and ours, they're projecting it's going to be $41 million per mile. So to me, the construction cost, the project cost is way understated.
Did y'all hear him? He said that in California,
141 million.
141 million per mile is what California ended up running, and they're estimating here it's going to be 41 million. So you can put
$100 million off.
Yeah, I would take the California factor. I would, but still, I'd be amazed if they can build it for that.
One more point on that. Originally, they started off estimating $33 billion for that project in California, and now it's up. I'm just saying, $33 billion, and now it's at $98 billion. Is one of the latest.
The first shot out of the bag, it was $10 billion, just like
So,
ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Texas Central Railway's ultimate goal is this big, huge, high-speed triangle through the state of Texas, Houston, Austin, Fort Worth, maybe even San Antonio. Right? Is it too early to get the counties that would more than likely be involved, and the folks there that don't know anything about this?
No, so that's
Is
a
it way
very,
too early for that?
no, it's not, and that is the reason why we're forming this organization. So one thing we're also doing is looking at, and this is early, I'm looking at forming a county judge coalition, okay? So I've reached out already to that corridor, found a county judge who really understood this impact through that area, and I'm talking about between Austin and Houston, who's willing to take the charge on that corridor. So absolutely great question. We're definitely going to coordinate with those, but this is much bigger than that. It's a 14,000-mile plan across the entire United States of America. 14,000 miles. It's Obama's initiative. This is high-speed rail plan. So it goes.
What's wrong with Amtrak?
Well, Texas Amtrak. Now that's his coin term right there. What's wrong with it? You don't see it anymore, right? Because it doesn't work. So getting there an hour quicker with the same concept is the same result.
Power lines coming in, they're gonna try to use that to their advantage.
Well, that's what Kyle was saying earlier is they have selected. Well, I say that TCR is selected as their preferred route to be along the transmission line corridor, and basically, obviously they're a for-profit company, so the idea is probably, my guess is, it's to their advantage, right?
They've already got the lines, but they're proposing another set of lines.
Oh, you mean, yeah, so what's your question?
Trying to piggyback on each other or use it to their advantage.
No, it would be a total separate right-of-way. So it would be, you'd have the existing line, then you'd have another transmission line right-of-way, then you'd have another right-of-way for the high-speed rail.
And one thing to keep in mind also, they gotta get power to this train. So they're gonna be running transmission lines and substations all up and down this to tap into those lines. So not only are we having to deal with the train itself, we're gonna have to deal with the infrastructure to get the power to the train.
Center Point project, the Brazos, what is it called?
Brazos
Brazos Valley Connection. Our Sub-Regional Planning Commission has also sent letters of coordination to the Public Utilities Commission. Now, they have responded. So we're going to be getting with them to schedule some meeting dates. Again, though, that's going to be part of getting together with Dan and Margaret Byfield, with Stewards of the Range, and planning that out. Because, I mean, they're all wanting to go in the same spot. I know that CenterPoint is extremely protective of their easements. I can't imagine that this would be something that would, literally, some people say, well, I heard it's going to go underneath the power lines. I can't imagine that would ever happen. So, if you had the power lines in, because, I mean, you've got Delta Towers right now. Everybody understands, you've got Delta Towers with 150-foot of easement, right? CenterPoint wants to run another line. Now, if they run Delta Towers, it's going to be 150 more foot of easement. I've asked the question, in fact, at our Sub-Regional Planning Commission, we had CenterPoint come to us, and I presented the question, I go, are there any efficiencies of scale? And they said no. They said on a Delta Tower, you gotta have 150 feet because the lines can sway during, bad weather and all this kind of stuff. So it'd have to be 150 foot new of easement. Now, they also have different towers. They have, for example, these taller towers. They're more expensive, but 125 foot of easement. They also have monopoles. The monopoles are the most expensive of all, but they require 90 foot of easement. But I don't really care about the cost. That's a pass-through as far as I'm concerned, people in Houston or whoever's going to be using electricity. But these are all issues happening at the same time, so that's why I think the Sub-Regional Planning Commission is going to be so important, because it all needs to be coordinated together. Okay?
Worldwide, from the research the little bit of research that I got to do before I came over here. Anybody want to hazard a guess as how many of them operated a property?
That's a little bit misleading in the sense that what they are proposing is different from that. They're proposing a privately constructed and operated high-speed rail. There is not any of those in the entire world. Right? The one you're talking about in Japan is privately operated now, but it was not built with private money. Very big difference.
They're all subsidized.
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
subsidized from everybody in this room.
That's right.
They're built in the United States, they're subsidized.
And that's exactly the point, is that we know the inevitability of financial collapse of this project. We know that. It may not be when they first open it, but it might be 3 years into it, or whenever they finally get tired of pumping money into it. But we know the inevitability of that fact, right? And that's the reason why we're taking the fight now through the whole system statewide.
How is this gonna affect the power grid? Where's the power gonna be generated from to run these things? Have they thought about that?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think that the individual co-ops are gonna have to deal with that. That's one of the other things that's on our strategic plan, is to talk to the individual co-ops up and down this line, because you're right, you've got a new power drain. Whenever a train goes whizzing by, are my lights gonna dim?
Yes.
I need to know that. And we all need to understand those kind of questions.
Tonight, there's 3 things we're talking about. The advocates group, the sub-regional group, and the Texans against GM. Okay, what are we supposed to do tonight? Join group number 1? We don't join group number 2, do we? Because that's the county doing that, right?
Right.
Sub-regional?
Right, tonight, there's 2 things that you can do, okay? The advocacy group, the Waller County Advocacy Group, we're asking if you join up or get with me, give me your name and email and all that good stuff, so we can start coordinating with all the folks that want to be part of that group. That's what I'm asking for. The sub-regional, right this second, there is nothing to do with the sub-regional until they meet again. They're going to have their meetings and start meeting with Dan and figure out exactly what it's going to cost for them to start getting Dan involved with it. So the third group, the nonprofit group, or actually Texas for No High Speed, they're the ones that are asking for a little bit of cash at this point in time. And if you stop and look at it from just an economic standpoint, if there's 10 counties, they're looking at $10,000 a county. You know, if you look at 350 people in this room, you know, what are we talking about? $15, $20 a piece? You know, it's not a big number. But again, it takes everybody. It doesn't take one person to put money in and everybody says, well, somebody else will do it. No, somebody else isn't going to do it. You know, as the old saying goes, you know, if it's going to get, if it's going to be done, who's going to do it? All right, I'm going to do it. When's it going to be done? Well, it's either going to be done today or it's not going to be done at all. That's the attitude you've got to have. You have to have the attitude that you're responsible to make this thing work and to stop this train. If you put it off on somebody else, you're defeating yourself and you're hurting this county.
On this website you're talking about, you have a list of city, state, and federal folks that are for this, so we know who to vote against.
For those in the area, we have a list of those people that are for this. Right now, we're trying to determine that. There's people flip-flopping each and every day, depending on who they're standing in front of, right?
Put a list up so their names are highlighted. Put it on Facebook so they know if they're silly enough to vote for it, they won't be here the next election.
That's right, and that's what I'm all for. You're right on, brother. You're right on. And what we have to do is our lobbying effort is up at the Capitol trying to figure that out. That's part of what they do.
Senator Colcourse is against it.
Absolutely. I had dinner with Senator Colcourse last night. She hates it. She can't stand this project. I mean, she can't believe that this thing is still going forward right now. Sub-Regional Planning Commission, we're not funded. We're not asking for your money. But you really have two organizations here that you need to support. The Waller County Advocacy Group, okay? If you're Waller County, if you're from a different county, you might have a different group. And then Texans Against the Rail, okay? Against high-speed rail. Because the money that you give to the Waller County Advocacy Group, that will be the money that will help our Sub-Regional Planning Commission on the coordination. Okay? Dan and Margaret Byfield. And in the past, I mean, as far as Dan and Margaret Byfield, I mean, these people go above and beyond. A lot of times they'll work way beyond even when they know they're probably not going to get paid. But they basically work at like $150 an hour. And will say, not that the money for the lobbyists, we need to counter them, but dollar for dollar, the money that goes in coordination will be the best dollar value that we spend in this fight. Because even with Dan and Margaret Byfield, you know, if Grimes County's using them, we're using them, you know, we're talking maybe tens of thousands of dollars is what we will spend with Dan and Margaret Byfield. As opposed, because a lot of people say, well, we'll just get attorneys, we're going to file. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can use that money way better fighting this with coordination. But so you got two groups, okay? I hope that clarifies everything. We're in the same boat.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you're in that part of Harris County, and I'll do everything I can to annex that area if I can, I promise. Harris County reneged on that a long time ago, and we need to fix that, I think, but anyway. Yeah, we're in the same boat, so it's all coming through that same area. I think we're ideally situated. The Waller County Advocacy Group is ideally situated for those folks in that area. Yes, ma'am?
So our school district, is our school district part of?
Yes, Waller ISD is a member of the Sub-Regional Planning Commission. They're a non-voting member, but they are a member.
So then that affects those of us who live in this area, who live in Harrison.
Right, because Waller ISD, see, that's another thing. We're the Waller County Sub-Regional Planning Commission, but our geographic, you're absolutely right, it's a good point. Our geographic boundaries for the Waller County Sub-Regional Planning Commission it's all of Waller County, because it's the county plus all the cities are members, plus Waller ISD. So, and you know Waller ISD extends into Harris County. So we actually cover that part of Harris County that's in Waller ISD's territory. So we actually do cover that area.
One other question about the politics behind this. This doesn't look like capitalism or free enterprise to me, because these people can see the numbers just like we can. They're not doing this to make money, they're not doing it out of kindness of their heart. If we can look at the numbers and see that this proposal is going to fail, and it's going to take public funds to bail them out, somebody's making money from this. Somebody's pocket's being lined.
Robert Eccles, look out the list.
Yeah, the hogs are at the trough.
You know, if I could
That's how we say it in Bryan County. Imagine if it got built, right? Or at least that's what I suspect the plan is. Imagine if they start off, as Kyle was saying, and they get it constructed and going with private money, and then it fails. It's not working. So do you think at that point in time, once the damage has been done, people's private property has been taken, the rails have been built, it will be very difficult for our state and our politicians to not go in and bail it out. So the whole point that we're trying to do is to bring this to light today, before it ever begins. We deserve the opportunity to know today, what is the long-term impact going to be to us? And make that decision today for the benefit of our future.
TxDOT has already done a draft environmental impact statement for Waller County when we were all fighting the Trans-Texas corridor. We got the Katy Prairie Conservancy involved, they got the Sierra Club involved, and they ripped that draft environmental impact statement apart. And it's still out there, it's somewhere in the archives, but you need to get a hold of that draft environmental impact statement. It's there, and one of the reasons they have some problems with Waller County, there's a tremendous amount of environmentally sensitive areas in this area within a mile.
Yes, sir. We'll go looking for that. Thank you very much.
In one of the recent articles that has come out, and it might have been TCR, I know what they're also looking at now is a potential alternate route that would take it down to I-10 and then go in on I-10. Now, if you come in down Hager Road, if they actually go ahead and follow all the way to the Zenith substation, and then you go south of there, the Katy Prairie Conservancy will be impacted. So I have a feeling Mary Ann Piancentini, I'm surprised she's not here tonight, but we will definitely be working with them, because that is something that you can't have that going through an ecologically sensitive area. So.
Because we're specifically asking American Stewards to provide a service, you need to give that money to TJ if you want to donate to Waller County. You can give it to the Grimes Citizen Advisory Group if you want to do it through Grimes County. But if you send it to American Stewards of Liberty, then that completely defeats the purpose. So you can't do it that way. Send it to TJ or send it to us.